And I'm going to look in our group. Hello, good morning, everybody. Kenda Summers and Hazel coming to you live. I have two screens here, and I think, okay. Hazel, do you see me? I see you.
I do see you, Kenda. Hi.
Well, I think we're live. I'm multitasking here, and I'm not great at it. It's like, it's like tapping your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time. It takes a lot of coordination. So I'm just taking a peek quick in the Facebook group. Okay, we're there. All right.
Hi.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We've got a few minutes, Hazel, before we go live. So,
Okay.
whereabouts in the world are you? Tell us that first off.
Yeah, I'm in England. I'm just outside the cathedral city of Lichfield in Staffordshire, which is central England. So I'm literally in a village about 5 miles north of Lichfield.
What's your weather today? Is it cold?
No, it's quite muggy. It's quite muggy, but it's grey and overcast. There, we've had quite a bit of rain today, which is a change from what we've had over the last few days, which has been lovely.
Typical British weather, though, right?
Yeah, especially in months of autumn or fall. Yes.
How close are you to Buckingham Palace?
Traffic permitting, probably about 2.5 hours.
Oh shit! Really, that far?
Yeah, I'm right in the middle of England. I'm middle England, central England.
So you're kind of on the outskirts then, like, would you call it the suburbs?
Yeah, yes, it would be classed as, well, it's actually a village that I live in. Okay. But yeah, it's right in the middle. So Staffordshire, which is famous for Wedgwood, pottery, generally, Dr. Johnson, who wrote the dictionary.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice. Staffordshire is mainly famous for the pottery, the pottery side of things.
Oh, I love it. Well, I'm Canadian, so even though I've been in the U.S. for the past 5 years, I was born and raised in Canada. So that's where my heart is and will always remain. And it's interesting when I don't know if you guys pay much attention to what's going on in the U.S. with the politics right now, and just the world's a mess right now, right? And everybody will, the conversation always seems to lean towards, do you like wearing masks or do you not like wearing masks? That's a debate. And then it's like, well, are you Democrat or are you Republican? And I'm always so happy to say, well, I'm Canadian, so I'm not allowed to vote.
That gets you out of that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't dare get involved with any of that. So being Canadian, we're like sisters from another mister type thing, because we both have the Queen at the top of the top of our hierarchy, so to speak. So welcome, Hazel. Welcome. I'm really pleased to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
I was going to say this morning. It's 11:30 here, but 5:30 your time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the reasons we decided to do this, Hazel and I spoke about this a little bit, is all of a sudden one day you almost had like a breakthrough, right?
Yes. If you mean recently with Hugo.
Yeah, but okay, so I don't want to go longer than an hour. So let's tell the audience about Hugo, about the loss, the day, the night, everything changed for you. Give us a little bit of background.
Hugo was my gentle giant. He was a cream-pointed, very handsome, pretty short hair. He'd turned 10 on the 1st of June. Bright, bonny, photographs. He was just Hugo. He was there to always greet me. And I came home from work on the evening of the 5th of July. He greeted me as he always did. He played in the garden. He ate his dinner. I've got 2 other cats, and the routine was just as it always was. In the early hours of the 6th of July, I was awoken to hearing neighbourhood cats brawling, for want of a better word, fighting. woke me up. I thought my two younger cats were perhaps having a bit of a set to, early hours of the morning. And there was Hugo on my bed, fast asleep, or so I thought. And I stroked him and I said, typical Hugh, you, nothing phases you. I checked on the other two. They looked a bit startled, but made sure they were okay. I was about to get into bed. Something said to me, just check Hugo again. It did. And I couldn't wake him. And he passed away in his sleep. And I just went into autopilot, Kendra, to be honest. To face that shock, he was on my bed. He was, there was nothing horrible about his expression. He was just fast asleep. He was still warm. I tried everything. I tried massaging him. It was all in split seconds. I rang the emergency vet and I just flew him down to the vets.
And at that point, there was nothing that could be done. What is so incredibly devastating about this story, Hazel, is he was perfectly fine, right? Yeah.
The questions started instantly. What did I miss? What were there any warning signs? This is my fault. It didn't matter how much. I mean, the emergency vet was a vet nurse reassuring me. When his own vet came on duty, she convinced me. She said, Hazel, I knew Hugo. If you'd have brought him down the day before, I bet I'd have sent him home with you. Mm-hmm. And it didn't matter. The shock, what's happened? What's happened in the space of a matter of a few hours?
How could this happen?
Yeah. And I've got my other two cats, completely bewildered. Henry, my other little boy, especially, because he and Hugo were bonded. So then I had the unenviable task of dealing with the grieving animal as well as me.
Yeah. And going to the vet and dealing with all that during the pandemic. Like, I don't know, I'm sure it's the same where you are as it is here. You can't go into the veterinary clinic, can you?
It was, despite the fact it was July, Kendra, it was chilly. It was very cold, and no, I couldn't. I sat on a wall in the vet's car park, cradling Hugo, until I was able to say to the vet nurse.
Yeah. Oh, my heart breaks for you. I give you my
real tender. I couldn't go in with him. She was wearing full PPE. Yep. I was devastated. And this whole scenario, standing in a cold car park, and I just thought, how quickly life can change. How quickly life can change. As if this year hasn't been difficult enough for many people. I was now presented with this, which, and the knock-on effect thereafter.
Absolutely. And I thank you for sharing with us. And I know it's difficult, Hazel. I know I could hear you struggling with your words. And I even struggle, my loss of my heart dog was 3 years ago, and I still struggle when I have to tell my story. But by you telling your story here today, Hazel, you're helping a lot of people that are listening to you, that are hoping that one day they can be able to tell their story, and to also, they're grasping right now at, okay, so what did you do after that? How did you come to the point where you're able to sit here right now and have a discussion with me? So can you share with us just some of that story, Hazel?
Yes, with pleasure. Because the way I look at this, sitting here, if I could help others, talking to you, is in honor of all that Hugo brought into my life. And I'll be honest, the days following, the weeks following, were horrible. They were horrible. They impacted not only on my personal life, but on my business life. I'd got grieving animals. I mean, when you've got two other cats that are walking around the house meowing and looking for Hugo,
Oh,
that just compounds. Yeah, that just compounds things. And I've had animals in my life my whole life, but never have I been presented with. I've had all sorts of different scenarios over the years, but never presented with this and to deal with it alone. And I feel that I had to do something to help me through this, as much as crying is important.
oh,
to
yes.
keep everything bottled up, and there's no shame in tears. I don't care whether you're a guy or a girl. There is no shame in tears. To me, that is the price that we pay for everything that they give to us. And the reason that I'm talking to you, Ked, is the level of support for pet bereavement is not brilliant. If it was human bereavement, it's slightly different.
Yes.
But not for pet bereavement. And I wanted to do something to not just honour Hugo and my previous animals, but other people who are in the same position as me, who are more raw. And it's to honour their and to keep the memory alive by talking about them, not to sort of bury them because society expects you to, and by that bury them inside of yourself, but to keep talking about them. They were part of he was part of my life for a decade.
Yeah.
Animals
a child.
And animals are part of your life. Exactly. I don't have children, so yes. And they're part of your life for longer sometimes than a lot of marriages last these days. So this is how long they're part of your life for. And talk about them. They're part of you. They're part of your life. So I guess this is where the internet can be it can be your friend if you get the right places. And I started to just do a lot of research, and this is how I found your group, is how I found Kate as well. And I thought I've got to start not racing through grief. You can't race through grief. It's staged and it's different for everybody. But I've got to start doing something. And for me, it's looking at his photos. I've built a memory book. I've got collage. I asked the vet for his paw prints.
Do you have the picture too, Hazel?
I haven't got
that your dear friend.
That one. This one. Yeah. That a friend of mine did for me.
Oh,
that was only taken in May. It wasn't that long ago. That was during lockdown here in the UK.
It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. The thing that strikes me about what you just said, forgive my tears, is how fast society dictates that we need to get on with things. You go to your work, you're around your family, you're around your friends, and everybody's like, well, okay, it's been 3 days. Like, aren't you over it yet? Like, what's going on? And then
literally
they start to make you feel like there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. And there really is not,
no, there's nothing wrong with you. And it's because we're such a grief illiterate society that
absolutely
we really are. And I mean, I'm over here in the US, you're in England, and it's on both sides of the ocean. And and even in Canada, I mean, we're all grief illiterate. And the part that really, really upsets me is, where do you go when you have nowhere to go? Who do you talk to when you have nobody to talk to? Who's going to understand when nobody understands? And there's such a lack of that out there. And I can't tell you how pleased I am, because I know how difficult this is, Hazel. This is not easy. Like, I still tear up when I talk about Stella, my heart dog, and when I lost her. But I also think that your story can help other people. I want you, if you will, if you'll share a little bit about your work provided you with a counselor, which was wonderful.
Yes, I have to say that I'm lucky, fortunate in that my sales manager. I'm in the sales industry. I sell new homes or real estate, and my sales manager is very fond of animals himself, and in fact, a few years ago and he told me this. He lost his little West Highland White Terrier, and he said at the moment he can't bring himself to have another dog because she meant the world to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat and had a very long conversation, and he said, because I work for a big organisation, would I be interested in the counselling? And I thought, well, yes, I would, because Hugo ultimately, you can see from that photograph of him and I, he was calm, even-tempered.
He's your baby.
But a disposition that I hadn't naturally got. He was just everything, nothing phased Hugo. And I thought, I've got to try, because if I start saying no, because it was tough, and believe you me, it was tough. People will get very fed up with me even quicker, because they're going to see that I am disinterested in everybody. I've got to be careful here, because everybody has their own way of breathing and saying, this is me.
This is you. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I thought, well, I'll give it a go. And a counsellor was appointed for me. And I specifically said that, because you have to go through a format before you actually get to a counsellor, I wanted somebody who had an understanding of pet bereavement. The only one they could find was a guy, pleasant enough, who was located about 300 miles from where I live. And because of COVID, although COVID aside, because his location would be prohibitive anyway, but it was all done through Zoom. First couple of weeks were pretty good. In fact, I'd say first three sessions, because they're every fortnight, pretty good. But it was the penultimate one and the last one that stung, and it showed to me the level of, I'll say, misunderstanding, that unless people have had animals and had an absolute soul connection with them, they just don't get it. And because of what happened with Hugo, and because I'm still churning at this day, I'm still churning. Did I miss any signs? And over and over and over again, these keep coming around and keep coming around, and I'm thinking, but he was playing. He ate his dinner, And the counsellor said to me, well, you may or may not have missed some signs. It's something we will never know. And because you didn't choose to have a post-mortem, but I doubt you did, because you would have known. You knew Hugo. And I thought, yeah, you can't double back on what you've just said. The word, I could see from the look on his face that the guy didn't mean it as it came across. When emotions are raw, the slightest word out of step, it just cuts. It just cuts you, And he could see from the look on my face. I mean, this, Ken. Everything just flew back into my head. This is my fault. And I felt any progress that I've made, I was just pushed back. And he said, no, I didn't mean it. No. Well, he said, but in life, we just don't always know. There aren't. And I'm thinking, no. Yeah. And to be honest, anything that he said afterwards became almost like a white noise.
Yeah.
I'd heard enough. I'd heard what I didn't want to hear. And I rang the vet again, and she reassured me, and she said, no, it happens with people. Any living being, this can happen.
Yeah.
It was clearly a heart attack in his sleep, and it can happen to anybody.
And even you can't unhear his words, right?
Yeah,
like
I can't unhear his words. I still can't unhear his words. It's been a month ago, and I still can't unhear his words. Anyway, that was my penultimate session. I forced myself to have the final one simply because work had paid for it. And he looked like he was going through motions. He the initial interest from the first couple of 3 sessions had waned, and I thought, yeah, you're not, despite the fact he told me that years ago he'd had a dog in his life, you're not getting it.
No.
If I was talking about a human, you get it, but you're not getting this. You're sort of thinking, well, it's been nearly 11 weeks now. What questions can I ask her? I didn't really want questions. I just wanted somebody to talk to listen to me. And then he said, well, you get on well. You've said you get on well with people who breed cats. You're going to get another kitten.
The last thing you wanted to have somebody say to you at that time, right?
Absolutely right. And I'm not saying people who do say, well, that, you know, for them it's right. For me, and I told them at the beginning, it isn't right for me. And, you know, if people feel that that is their way of getting through grief, fantastic. It's not my way. And I'd already said, please don't even, you know, I'd said it at the beginning, please don't even go down that road, because for me, it is not right.
You're not going to entertain
he
that.
hadn't listened, or he hadn't, you know, I'm making this guy sound really, he wasn't really awful, but it's like he hadn't registered what I said at the beginning of the sessions all those weeks previously, and it put right at the very last one. That was almost his final question to me.
You know, I have to wonder, like, I don't think that chap would be very good at even handling people grief. You know, there are counselors, and I'll run into them in my profession, not run into counselors, but people that come to see me because they've been in talk therapy for a very long time and they have this problem. And, you know, there is a danger in talking about a problem that you can't get past over and over and over again, because what you're doing is you're reliving something that you have absolutely no control over. So you're firing off all those neurons in our brain, and you're sending them the message, and that image, that thought, that whatever is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. When people come to see me, I tell them I want to know a little bit of background because it's important. I need to know what happened. But my focus, Hazel, is on, I want to know how you want to feel when you leave my office. Absolutely. I want to know what you want your life to be like when you're outside and you're not around me anymore. That's where my focus is. And, you know, typical people are going to say, well, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I want, and so I'll say, okay, how do you want to feel instead? So when somebody's grieving, as you know, you have to feel all those emotions, all those rawness. And at the beginning, it's the acute stage, and you're bloody well bleeding everywhere. You're gushing, and there's no amounts of bandages in the world that can seal that blood up, and it shouldn't, because you're reeling in pain. You're reeling. You're reeling in pain. Yeah. And you know, those initial, and it's different for everybody. So it may be 2-3 days, it may be 2-3 weeks, maybe 2-3 months. It's different for absolutely everybody. So the more people that you run into that tell you, oh, you shouldn't be feeling like that, and oh, you should do this or that, or just go out and buy another pet, all they're doing is causing you more pain and giving you more things that you have to deal with, that are you can't deal with all of that right now. And my heart goes out to you, and I'm glad you reached out to me, because we had a conversation after that. He should not have said that to you. And I don't know how good of a counselor he is in the grief area. I mean, maybe he's a wonderful counselor for people who are getting a divorce, or you know what I mean, or people that they're upset because the husband leaves the toilet seat up and, you know, don't put the cap on the toothpaste. Maybe he's wonderful for that kind of stuff. But as far as grief goes, he lacks in that area. And you went backwards.
Yeah, I absolutely, I went backwards. I'm the first to admit I went backwards, and I sort of think, hang on, I'm grieving. I'm not ill. I don't need to be healed. I am grieving. I've lost human family members. Grief is grief. They are your family.
Mhm.
And you can't rush somebody through grief, because ultimately, if you try, it'll come out sideways at some other time. You know, you, but and for me to be sort of sitting here talking to you, it's not easy, but it's necessary. For me, it's
Yes.
necessary. Yeah.
It's healing. I want to say something to you, and you can tell me how you feel about this afterwards. Often when we have guilt, feeling that, is there more we could have done? Is there something that I didn't see? Like the way you were feeling a little bit. Often what happens, Hazel, is when death occurs, and it doesn't matter who the death is or what the death, it can be a pet, it can be a human, whatever. We realize that we have no control over things. And up to that point, like, I mean, we don't go through our daily day thinking about death, do we? I mean, I think we become a little bit more in tune to it when we're hurt and when we've had a loss. But the average person does not go through their day thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to die today? Or is my mom and dad going to die today? Or is my pet going to die today? We just don't go through life thinking along those lines. So then when something happens, we immediately we realize that we've lost control, because we all think we have control, right? We all think we have control, but ultimately, whatever your spirituality is, whatever your belief is, there's something bigger than us that controls everything, right? So when something happens, like in Hugo's case, where you automatically fall down into the, oh my gosh, did I miss something? Like, and I'm such a good mommy, but why did this happen? What what's actually happening is your brain is trying to come up with something that you can control.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thinking that you can control that, but you can't. You're looking at something with today's eyes that happened yesterday. So of course you're going to have all these, should I have seen something? Could I have done something differently? And what that is, it's the lack of control screaming at you. So then you start blaming yourself.
Yeah, and boy did I. I mean, people see me sitting here today. Trust me, it's in some respects it's a facade, but it's me moving through. I had to take time off work, and I was bloated. I was going to allow my employer, despite the economic situation, to say otherwise. I'd lost a family member, and so I immediately booked annual leave that was due to me, and I thought, I'm taking it because this is what he meant to me. I had to be here for Henry and Heidi, my other two, because they were grieving, and to sit. And yeah, as painful as it was, I'd watched videos of Hugo over and over and over again, because it kept him with me, and it still does.
Yeah.
And seeing his photos, and that's when I progressed to, finding the groups, the books that have been recommended to me, which
Yeah.
one specifically for me has been incredibly helpful, which was the Gone From Your Site. But I find writing, even if I'm writing dribble to myself, just typing about Hugo, and then just deleting it, just getting my emotions out of my system, writing down, reading about. But I've subsequently, done memorials. I mean, Hugo's ashes are buried in my garden under a rose bush, which the roses are the colour of his fur, and it's called A Faithful Friend. That's the name of the rose. And I've got the ring that I've got, which has got his fur and my previous
Yes.
cat fur in the ring. So they're with me here. But as I have with my previous animals, I'm keeping him alive. I'm keeping his memory, and I will talk
Yeah.
about it. And I urge everybody, don't sort of think because you can't see them, you talk about them. If it was I mean, I lost my dad years ago, and I still talk about my dad. He was my family. So, because society dictates we should do one thing. Sorry, no, not when they're a part of your family and they mean the world.
I hope we, that the little group that we have, which is very small right now, but it's growing by the days. There's only 600 people in it. But I'm hoping that all of us can kind of become grief ambassadors, where
Absolutely
we
will.
can go out and educate people. And
Yeah.
I've been in other grief groups. Kate runs an amazing group as well. And the one thing that Kate and I both have in common, even though we're different but the same, is that we believe that people need to have something to look forward to, and there's more than just the loss. You need to know that there is sunshine out there, and little by little you are going to open up that window and you're going to let that sun shine in every day, just a little bit. And there's people that they feel guilty if they have a smile, or if something interesting happens in their life that makes them feel good. They're like, oh my God, I'm doing injustice to Hugo because I've got a little smile on my face, or because that was bloody funny and I laughed, and oh my gosh, how dare I laugh or put a smile on my face when I've lost Hugo. And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be this way or that way. There's a balance.
There's an absolute balance, but you saying that, I couldn't listen. I love music. I couldn't listen to any song at all. It took me, I drive to work, I drive home from work listening to the most boring documentaries, because I felt that every single song was attributed to my inner feelings for Hugo. Every word seemed to echo that. And we've talked before about there's one particular song about my previous cat George, and now Hugo, and it's Phil Collins, Against All Odds. And the words for that, I can't, the words for that for me just say everything.
Yes.
About, how could I just let you walk away?
I know.
And it's the
And
word.
didn't you have something interesting happen with Alexa?
Yeah, I did. People talk about signs, and I'm a great believer in signs, and it's not something that you can dictate or you can ask for to happen. And I lost my father, I've lost animals that have meant the world to me. My cat before Hugo, you refer to yours, Stella, as your heart dog, was my heart cat. Losing Hugo, the very next night, I had a vision of a cat walking through my garden. Clearly, Hugo came to my door. A couple of nights after that, because I really wasn't sleeping at all well, but I'd gone into a very deep sleep. And suddenly, Alexa was blaring this song that I'd never heard of. So I couldn't possibly, and it was 3 o'clock in the morning anyway, so I couldn't possibly have requested it. And all I heard, I'd never heard of the song, I had to Google it afterwards. All I heard was the words coming through Alexa, "Thank you for loving me." I subsequently found out it was Bon Jovi, but I'd never heard of it before. And there's nobody else here to have requested it.
So how did that happen?
It just came through Alexa. And that's that same day, or going into the later morning, there was a beautiful, I've got a photograph of it, tortoiseshell butterfly just sitting on his rose bush outside.
I love that. I love that. I love stories of people connecting. Hazel, it gives me goosebumps. And I think you've seen pictures, like when Stelly and I go walking, we are like sign magnets. And okay, so I want to address that, because there's some people that in the early stages, when you're in that acute phase where you're just so raw, it's really, really difficult to connect with the spirit of your pet, because you're just hurting so much. So just be patient. Give yourself time, because it will happen. It will happen. I can remember the day after Stella was killed. I walked up the office steps, and there was like this big plastic container that she would kind of stand on and look out over the world like she was, queen of the castle type thing. And there was this great big huge white feather, and it just stayed there. And it greeted me as I walked up the stairs. And of course I'm like crying my eyes out. But all these things are just connections to our loved one.
Yeah.
And for the people, because there are some people on here that they're going, well, I haven't seen anything. Just be patient. Just be patient.
Give yourself a break.
Absolutely.
You've been through a hellish time. You're going through a hellish time. Give yourself a break. It's not a marathon. You're grieving for a family member. Just go through. It's just a stage by stage thing. I was born into an older family. I've had a lot of bereavement, unfortunately, in my life. And I just think just give yourself a break. You can't beat yourself up over you're going through enough without beating yourself over that sort of thing.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being feeling fantastic, where do you see yourself today on the grief scale?
6.5, 6.5 to 7 probably.
And I mean, that could change tomorrow, right?
Yeah, absolutely it could. Absolutely it could.
Yeah, that could change tomorrow.
And I know that it will change, because I know what I'm like when the nights start drawing in. It'll change then, because as it gets darker and that sort of thing for me, I can pretty much guarantee that it will change. So it's a case of just take it every day as it comes. And if crying hurts nobody, and it's and to me it cleanses. It's a cleanser, and cry. For goodness sake.
The saying goes that you need to cry 1,000 tears, and until you cry those 1,000 tears, you're going to continue crying. So initially, when people will say to me, "I can't stop crying. I'm crying every day," I'm like high-fiving them. It's so important. It's so cleansing. And Mike Mandela, a dear friend of mine, he lost his cat, and he actually had an article, and I think I posted it in here, about the therapeutic nature of the endorphins that get released when you do cry. So there is a reason why you're crying, and when people try to suppress that, that's where the danger happens. But of course, because we're society and we need to go to work and we need to generate money and we need to be with family and friends, there's sometimes when that crying is not okay. You don't want to get to the point where your boss is going to fire you because you come into work every day and you're a mess. Especially if you're in the public sector. My job, I wasn't. I had kind of two jobs. So when I went to deal with people, then of course I had to put on my professional hat, and I had to be a different person than the person who was at the office kind of answering emails and answering questions by phone. And there I could be myself. But when I went to my professional office, I had to put on that different hat, and I had to take on that stature of somebody who was a leader, because people who were coming to me for help. I couldn't be that wounded person in grief, So there are some techniques, and I shared them with you, Hazel, things that you can do to kind of stop the voice in your head that's controlling your emotions. Things that you can do to stop the sadness so that you can perform your job or conduct a meeting or talk to your boss, because there are times after a while that our jobs aren't going to understand. I mean, we're not done grieving, but life, it's just so frustrating that it has to be that way, but it does have to be that way. It saddens me, because if you look into the way our elders handled grief, Hazel, and I don't know about the traditions in Britain, but in Canada, like a funeral parlor got its name because people were waked in their homes, in their parlors. So you came there and you visited, with the body, and you told stories and whatnot. That's where funeral parlor came from, because people were waked in their homes.
Almost lying in state. It's
yes, exactly. We used to have hearses. We used to have like that black Cadillac that would come pick you up.
Yeah,
You know what it is now? It's a white van with no windows on it. When you see a white van with no windows on it, chances are that there's a body in there going to a funeral home. We have become such a society where it's like, hurry up and get over this, you know.
Oh, absolutely. The disposable society, and that is true. And unfortunately, you can't dispose of your memories or of grief. You rebuild your life around the new situation. The expression that's being bandied around at the moment is the new normal because of COVID. Well, it is. It's your new normal,
right?
But you heal around it, and then I think pride eventually will take over. You're proud that you and like Hugo and I belong to each other. I'm prouder that he was mine. I'd rather have the 10 years that I had with him and be feeling like I do now than not to have known him
And
at all.
not. Yeah, it always saddens me, you know, and we're all different. When people will say, well, I'll never get another pet again, because if this is how much it hurts to lose a pet, I can't imagine. And I'm like, yes, of course it hurts right now, but it breaks my heart if you are a pet person to think that you'll never open yourself up to that love again. And I hope if anybody out there feels that way, that they'll really second think that. And I'm not by any means saying go out and buy a pet. Hazel and I were talking about this earlier. When I was married, I used to raise Great Danes, and I lost one of my Great Danes. And my husband at the time, with all the best intentions, went out the very next day after I lost my Jessie and brought home this little puppy, this little Great Dane puppy, and, you know, called me down from upstairs and down to the kitchen. And there's this puppy sitting on the floor. And oh, Hazel, I was angry. I was, it was the wrong thing to do, you know, and I couldn't do anything because as a pet lover, there's this innocent little puppy crying because, you know, it's a strange environment and who are all these people. So I grew to love that dog, and that was Maggie. And yeah, she became the world to me. But, you know, it's in the right time. and I wasn't driving that bus. That was my husband at the time, with all the best intentions, you know, but he was somebody who was just not comfortable with grief. And you know, the way to fix it is go buy another pet. And you can't
be fixed because you're not broken.
That's right.
So you can't be, you haven't broken a limb. You can't put a plaster cast on it. You know, you're not broken. You are grieving. Yeah. And this is where even your nearest and dearest don't always get it.
No.
Hugo came to me after I lost my feline soulmate, my George. And I swore, even though I'd had animals in my life from the day I arrived on the planet, because my mum's Dutch, she was a dog groomer, you know, the whole of my life. But when I lost George, my previous British short hair, I swore on everything, and that was it. That was it. I could never have another animal. My home lost its soul. And it took me 13 months before I had Hugh. 13 months. And it took all that time and even a trip overseas before I could bring myself round. But my home became cold. It became soulless. Hugo brought me the sunshine. And in honour of George, I had Hugo.
The warmth again, right?
There is no replacing. You cannot replace. They are irreplaceable. No. I always say it's irreplaceable. They're irreplaceable. Each one is unique. Each one has its own traits and quirks, as we all do. But you know, thanks to George, I had Hugo, and you know, an amazing cat.
It was meant to be, right? And it's funny. Right now, I have Stelly, and you guys have seen pictures of her. And there's part of me that wants another puppy, and I struggle with it because it's almost like grief in a little sense. It's like, well, how can I bring another puppy? And I don't know if I can love another puppy and still have Stelly. And how's this going to work? And I'm sitting here having these conversations with myself, and I'm thinking, oh my God, it's just like grief, you know, like wondering whether I should bring another dog into the household or not. It's and there's part of me that still protects my heart dog, you know, that it's just interesting. It's just interesting, all the emotions. And I know with our discussions, Hazel, some people are going to be able to relate a lot to what we're saying. If I was to ask you what the biggest takeaway is that you've learned from Hugo and life as it is now for you, what would you say your biggest lesson has been that Hugo taught you?
Oh, Hugo, nothing fazed Hugo. He just accepted his life as it was, and that whatever was meant to be was meant to be. His demeanor, it didn't matter what mood I was in. I could be come home from work tired and cranky, and he was just big headbutt. It's okay. This is how it is. And I sort of think, this is why I think this group is so important, because for him and for everybody else, it's in there. It's in their honor. Thank you for everything. And he's just taught me so much of just don't worry about tomorrow. Just live for today.
Live today. And boy, do we learn that lesson fast when grief hits us, right?
Yeah.
I'll never ever forget. And each person and each animal I've lost in my life, Hazel, there's been a different lesson learned. The one, they're all different. They all stand out. I'm doing my visual reconstruct, accessing my memories. But when my father died, we went to I was called like at 2:00 in the morning. It was the Father's Day. And the day before Father's Day, the whole family had gathered at hospice, and Dad was on intravenous. And we knew that eventually we would have to meet with the doctors and remove the intravenous from him, because it's a life-sustaining measure. He couldn't be on intravenous and be dying at the same time, keeping him alive. So my sister and I were preparing that, the next day or the day after, we would have to make that decision to pull the life support off of my father. And I got a phone call at 2:00 in the morning, and I was back in Canada from the US, and it was the hospice calling, saying that my dad had passed away. And I jumped out of bed and I got so angry. The only reason we left, Hazel, was because Dad was doing so well. He was, yeah, okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow. I mean, it wasn't like that. I mean, he was dying, but it was like, hugs and kisses, and I'll see you tomorrow, and, drive carefully and whatnot. So I was like, I can't believe this. Like, is this a dream? Like, is this real? And I got in my car, and I drove down to where the hospice was. And I remember touching him, and he was still warm, and my sister and I were there, and we just held onto his hands, and, just the final moments. And when I came out of there, Hazel, I'll never forget how fast everything was moving around me. In my mind, time had stopped.
Absolutely.
And everything was moving so fast around me. Yeah. And it just made me so sad, and it made me cry my eyes out. And I remember I just sat in my car for like half an hour, just tears streaming down my face. And I just wanted the world, I'm going to cry now. I just wanted the world to stop. I just wanted everything to slow down. And when you lose pets and people, friends that you love, I think you become a wiser person, because you realize how artificial everything is around us. And
totally,
do you agree?
Totally agree. And how society just expects you to carry on. Yeah. You can't just carry on.
No.
You just can't. if the situation was reversed and it was them in the situation, they wouldn't be carrying on. So why should they expect you to? And life becomes incredibly unfair in a split second.
Yes.
I lost my dad nearly 18 years ago, and I remember walking to the hospital and it said DNR above his bed, and I nearly fell through. Nobody's told me that. No, I mean, I knew it's what he wanted, but no, to actually just see that, do not resuscitate above his bed. Nobody's told me that. And you want to start. What do? You start to grieve before they've even passed away.
Yeah.
And to compound matters, because of how my dad was looking out for other people. He didn't want us there when he passed away. So he passed away alone. So I had to we were in the hospital, but he wouldn't have us in the room. He wouldn't have us in the ward.
To protect you, right?
Yeah. I suppose it's his generation. I mean, he'd be in his middle 90s now. I had people after I lost my dad. I remember 3 weeks after I lost my dad, a friend of mine that I classed as a friend that I'd had from the age of 12 to 32 turned around to me and she said, Hazel, I can't stand this any longer. You're too maudlin.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not. What hurt even more, Kendall, was the fact that she lost her mum when we were just 15, and I pretty much lived at her house to help her through. But that's what she said to me, and I thought, well, that 3 weeks, after you're too maudlin.
Okay. Hazel, can we find the richest person in the world and form a foundation where people can realize that, it's interesting. And I have this conversation with a lot of people. You don't realize how much it hurts and how much it affects you until it affects you. Right?
Absolutely right. Yeah.
You don't have any clue. And even the most hard-nosed person has no idea until it affects them. And then and only then do they realize. And grief is going to hit all of us. Nobody in the world is exempt from grief. If you're living and breathing right now, grief's going to hit you.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And maybe it does become boring for people to keep hearing you saying the same things, but you've got to talk. You've got to talk. I mean,
it's the only way you can heal.
It is the only way you can heal. It is the only way you can heal. All you can do for somebody is to listen.
Yeah.
It's a small price, because they're going to want to be listened to themselves one day. And I think this is where, and the reason that I'm kind of doing this is to just get it out there that, it's nothing to be it's not a race. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It is a grief, and I just hope that this group will be introduced to other people, and because there'll be people out there that have never heard the group that are just not going to be knowing which way to turn at the moment. They're going to be absolutely devastated, and you just can't rush through these things.
No. And what I pride myself with this group compared to other groups, because I'll poke around in other grief groups and see what's going on. And in a lot of groups, there's no promise of sunshine. There's no promise of light and love. And my God, I can't imagine anybody wanting to stay stuck in this area. And when people join the group, that's one of the questions that they're asked is, have you experienced a loss? Is that why you're here? But also the foundation of this group is this group is moving. I don't want you to stay as you are now. And there's lots of groups out there where you can be part of them, and there's no healing. There's no tips, there's no resources. Everybody is just consoling everybody else. And I don't want this group. This group will never be that. This group is about healing in time, at your own pace. And that may take 3 years. That may take 5 years. That may take 11 weeks. Everybody is individual. Everybody is different. There's no timeline, like you said, Hazel. There's no timeline. Don't compare. That's the worst thing you can do is say, hey, Hazel is feeling this way after 11 weeks and I'm 5 years and I'm still feeling this way. If you are 3 years out and you're still like you can't function, then chances are at that point you need help.
Yeah.
And, reach out to me, and I'm not necessarily going to be the person that's going to help you, but I'll give you some resources
Mm.
that can help you. If you're feeling suicidal, that is not a way you should be feeling. Yes, we're going to have those moments where we just figured that there's no choice, and that's all there is left to us. But those moments will come, and then a rationalization will happen where it's like, okay, that's a bad thought, and we need to not be thinking like that. We are going to have our challenges. um Hazel, we're nearing the end, and this has been an absolute delight with you. And I know how difficult this has been for you. And I so appreciate you coming here and talking with us today. If there's one thing that you could leave, one message that you could leave for people in this group that are grieving, that are hurting, what's the one thing, one piece of advice that you'd like to give them?
Use the group. Talk. We all understand. We're all going through the same thing. Don't tuck yourself away and think that you're alone. We all feel like that. We're not.
Yeah, we do all feel like that. We do all feel like that. Hazel, I can't thank you enough. This
It's
this
done.
has
Thank
been
you.
amazing. I'm so happy that you agreed to do this. I thank you. And and I know you're going to be there for other people, and you're there for people can reach out to you and maybe get some tips and advice from you as to things that you did, resources that you used to help you. And of course, anybody can reach out to me anytime. And I've had people private messaging me, and I appreciate that. And I'll send them. Kate has a book that you can download for free that will help you understand grief. And I have some healing modalities, a recording, and
that's the one that helped me.
That's the one that helped you.
I know reflections help, but that's the one that helped me.
Yep, just understanding, and just know that there's little things that I can provide you with right now that are going to help you. It's not going to fix it, because like we're not broken. And how long are you going to grieve? You're going to grieve as long as you loved. You're going to grieve forever. It's not something that goes away. It just becomes different. It just takes on a different form. It just becomes different.
May I add one final point, Ken?
Absolutely.
I've got two other animals. I've got one just down there, and I just felt I had to do something, because for me to be in perpetual tears and that sort of thing was affecting them. They're grieving as well, and I think when we're grieving, we forget that Henry, especially, he's here, he's missing. Hugo, they were bonded.
They don't understand, right?
They understand something's changed.
Yeah.
And I sort of think, actually, I'm grieving. I understand what's going on. They're grieving. They don't understand what's the matter with me. Where's Hugo gone? So I thought, I've got to do something to get myself almost back on track, or at least a bit on track for them, because of all they're giving to me now. I mean, they're supporting me as much as I'm supporting them. And I think if we have got other animals, you become a tight team. You do it for each other. They're still going to be there for you despite their grief. They'll be there for you.
Absolutely. I always say people graduate when they start feeling more love than pain when they think about their loss. Can you say that you're starting to feel more love than pain when you think of Hugo?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, there was always that anyway, but I'm just so proud. I just wish life would have been a bit more kind to him, and he'd only just had his 10th birthday, and given him what he deserved, because he was just my big gentle giant.
Yeah. Left a lot on your heart, right?
Very much so. Very much
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Well, Hazel, we are going to sign off. I thank you very, very much for sharing with us. I know that wasn't easy. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to your involvement in the group, and having you help some other people as they move forward and find that they can feel more love than pain with their loss as well. Thank you again, and
Thanks, Linda.
we'll sign off for now. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.